There you have it. So let's bring in our guest now. Guest is Mr. African Farmer Mogaji. He's CEO, Farm Credit Nigeria Limited. He joins us live here in the studio. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, where do we start from? Because we'll talk about issue of price hike in commodities, just staple foods, beans, rice. So let's start with, why do we keep talking about food scarcity, lack of food sufficiency, and of course we talk about we do not even have enough for our own daily consumption. So let's start from there.
Well, the major reason why we don't have enough is we've not planned enough. We don't have enough because we've not planned enough. At federal, at state, at local government and private sector, across board, all of us have not planned enough. And I'll start from private sector and not government first. For private sector, we've seen the trends. We talk about the trends. We experience the trends, but we don't get into the game. We don't have skin in the game. We leave it for government. Meanwhile, government cannot do it. Government is not trained to do business. Agric is a business. So we've left it to government who are not trained to do the business. And so government also is not planning enough because we're not, you see, the moment you begin to put money in it, you call them to deliver. But because the private sector is still making money from oil and coal, then we're not holding them. And government is not planning enough. And that has been a challenge for somewhat 30 years now. It's the same story. New administration comes, tomatoes is always cheap in January, February, April, May, it goes high, and it's 30 years. So it's planning across board, planning.
So how do we connect the dots? I know the private sector has their own role to play. The government as well has their own role to play. Yeah, this administration has also shown tremendous interest by initiating some policies, as it were. You have the Anchor Brewers program and all of that. What is missing? How do we connect these dots?
Synergy. Synergy is missing. It's missing because, one, you don't have the government parastatals working together. The Ministry of Agriculture is not fully integrated with Ministry of Water Resources. When you hear Ministry of Water Resources talking, there's no Ministry of Agriculture there. So let me explain it. No. Water Resources is responsible for irrigation. Water Resources owns the lands. Ministry of Agriculture don't have the lands. So they only implement projects on Ministry of Water Resources, but they don't acknowledge water resources. So when the water resources needs to support, they don't support because they're not part of it. And also, when you hear either of those ministries talking about food security, you don't hear the Ministry of Youth and Development. And the youths are the ones that would operate. So everybody is operating in isolation, and so you can't see progress. And, because a chunk of the farmers currently are well over 55, to 60. So that synergy with the ministry and giving direction to the private sector. When I say giving direction, is to say XYZ is available. We need private sector to come in. These are the policies we've put in place. We don't see government at the forefront of doing that. They do it on security, but they forget that food security is even more important, than fuel security and coal. So we need government to begin to have like quarterly engagements with private sector to try to woo them into the agri sector by showing them what is available. Like we see the Dangotes embracing these things. But the other, Dangote operates at a scale. There's a mid and the small. Across that value chain, the private sector is not embracing it.
Okay, how much of engagement? Because you have said that the government needs to start engaging the private sector. But then, of course, I understand, or I believe that the private sector operators should have a kind of platform that they can engage the government with. Do we have such platform at the moment? Yes. Apart from individual who come up to say, I want to stage this, I want to lead this conversation, and how much of that result we've seen so far?
So we have Nigeria Agribusiness Group, which is like an umbrella body for agribusinesses. They are into advocacy. They are practitioners who've come together under Dr. Adesina when he was Minister of Agriculture. They put the body together, but they are large players who have created a platform for all the people to come in. But you find out that the private sector, when they want to come into the agri sector, they don't find out where are these bodies. They just go there with various assumptions. They invest and now find out that it's not, the grass is always greener on the other side. And so they pull out. Instead of trying to plug into the people who have gone ahead of you. The private sector also thinks that there's competition. As far as Nigeria's agriculture is concerned, there's no competition yet. We need more collaboration because the value chain is broken. What do I mean by value chain? So you need seed, you have to import seed. Somebody may have seeds and you are looking for seeds. And so once you begin to say, oh, there's competition, you won't get the seeds. So we don't have enough for seeds. We don't have enough for logistics. We don't have enough, but we need to collaborate together. That's a missing link. Everybody wants to do things themselves, and so it's not working.
I want us to do a bit of assessment of some of the policies initiated by this government. One, of course, one prominent one is the Anchor Borrowers program as well. How much of impact is that having on the sector, and who is taking advantage of that? Which of these operators, because you said you have various, groups and of course association as well. Who has taken advantage of that?
Well, I always say that the Anchor Borrowers program is a beautiful, well-packaged initiative. However, like any new thing, you need to monitor, you need to evaluate, you need to redesign also. So I think Anchor Borrower has passed that stage where they can do things like they used to. So it's designed for massive, what you call the anchor, somebody who brings 10,000, 20,000 farmers together, to produce and they buy off. But it's a beautiful design, but in implementation, do you know the farmers? So the default rate is high. Even CBN has said the default rate is high, and it's two ways. One is the funding doesn't come out from CBN at the right time. And so when it doesn't come out at the right time and the farmers have to go borrow money to complete the project, then default sets in.
I was going to ask you, if you benefited from that, that initiative, and how has it helped so far?
So I know some people who have benefited. I don't go after anything government. The time waste for me is not worth it. It's not worth it because you can apply and it's almost endless. And if you're a serious practitioner, you won't go after that because you don't know when it will come in, even if it will come. But I've seen a couple of people who've benefited from it. For the people who got it timely, it has worked out well, no doubt about that. But a majority have not got the funding at the right time, which is always a challenge with government initiatives. And the core reason why that is happening is because I don't see the Ministry of Agriculture playing a very active role in the anchor borrowers. It's taken out of the Ministry of Agriculture. I've applied, and I was told to come. I would have gotten it because it was clear. I applied for tomatoes, which was not in their program, and they were flexible enough. But I will tell you, is that time waste? You're not sure when it will come out, even if everything is complete. So I've not. But it has added to food production. It has added in increasing our food security. But in terms of efficiency, a lot still needs to be done.
I know some people have talked about how we need to produce for export purposes. And again, but then the challenge we're facing now is even consumption. We do not have enough to consume. And so we're also having issue of scarcity, and then the prices go up. Where do you think we need to focus to address this issue of food security, scarcity, and lack of food sufficiency for the nation? export, produce and export, so that we can have earn in foreign currencies, or produce for the nation to consume?
Every time we plan to produce for the nation to consume, it ends up failing.
Why is that?
Good.
Because this is a big market. You know, everyone is looking up to Nigeria as a big market. Even some people come into Nigeria because they know we have the numbers.
Our planning is myopic. It's planning again. So West Africa depends on Nigeria for a lot of grains. So every time we plan for ourselves and we don't plan for West Africa, when they come in, they bring money. They mop it out at higher prices because it attracts 100% and co when they get back to their country. So when you try to produce for us and we don't have enough and they come, they create scarcity. Climate change is not helping. So our implementation is always in the hands of the ministry, and the ministry is not trained for that. So bottom line is that we need to be planning for West Africa, and when we produce for West Africa, then the goal will be more. So let's say if we're producing for 200 million in Nigeria and we add West Africa, and that's like 300 million. When we project for 300 million, we're likely to be able to feed Nigeria, and the excess we can take there. So it's about the planning. And also, we don't have square pegs in square holes. We have round pegs in square holes. So you find the Minister of Agriculture who knows next to nothing about agriculture. It's a political appointee. You know, one of the past ministers, I won't mention his name, Minister of State, I attended a program, a media organization did that. And the man said, I have spent the last 2.5 years learning about agriculture. And I stood up from the hall. I felt it was an abuse on me. I've spent, as at then, I'd done over 26 years. And so you make a minister who is learning 2.5 years. So in a 4-year tenure, what does he have to offer? You know, and that's what happens. They go to Thailand and they say, oh, this seed is working in Thailand, bring it to Nigeria. They don't know that it doesn't work like that. So there's a lot of ignorance displayed, and that's why we will not be food secure.
Well, we should be leading in this conversation of ensuring that we get the proper, framework, and to ensure that we get going in this regards.
One, it's supposed to be a teamwork. It's
between the private sector and the government.
Yeah, between private sector and government, but mostly teamwork with government. No single parastatal can lead it. You know, so they can say the Ministry of Agriculture, because it's food, you know, that can lead it, but you must have agric in the Ministry of Youth and Development, agric in water resources. The policy keeps somersaulting. At some point in time, they merged the two together. And at some point in time, they said the Ministry of Water Resources cannot be involved in agriculture. But when we were food sufficient, the Ministry of Water Resources was equally producing commercially. That was when we had everything we needed. They were producing, the Ministry of Agriculture was doing what they were in policy,
right,
advocacy, you know, technology development and co. But the moment a policy came and stopped the river basin from producing, that was when the decline came.
So sometimes it's a policy issue, and
Yes.
then sometimes lack of planning.
Yeah.
Maybe we should wrap it up now. 2 questions in one, if you can do justice to it in a few minutes. Of course, some people say we still have harvest season ahead of us, and so we expect that food will be cheaper by the time we start harvesting some of that tomato. Okay, yam, of course, I'm aware that some people are still harvesting yam, and while people have started planting yam as well. It's the planting season, of course, some people are still harvesting and all of that. So what's your expectation for now? The inflation figure is due for next week. What's your expectation in terms of inflation figure or food inflation? And then secondly, how do we open up? Because there seems to be a gap between the supply chain and the value chain that you mentioned earlier. So how do we open up this economy to ensure that we're not only earning, but of course we have food to consume, and then every average Nigerian can also afford food on their table?
Yes, so the food inflation would, when it comes out, it will show that tomato is going down, almost everything is going down, but it's artificial. Because right now it's harvesting season for onions, the basic vegetables, the basic staples. Right. Now is the peak. So that's why the prices are going down. However, this is an unusual year also. So take for instance, when you pick maize, ideally around this time, maize should be about 30, 40,000 naira per ton. Maize fluctuates between 200 to 220,000 and occasionally 180,000. Ideally, the 70,000, 80,000 should be happening around May. And in January now, it's at least when it drops to 180,000. So it's not coming down, it's going up. And as we go to the peak, it's going on the rise. From next quarter, you will see the price of food go up again because it's planting season, we can harvest again. So bottom line is, and we're not preparing. We're not preparing. Tomato is going to be very expensive now. Pepper is going to be very expensive. Ideally, it's expensive from April, May, June. But this year it's going to go higher because 2 dams in the north were shut down and they are major producers of tomatoes. And also the insurgency.
How else can you get?
Well, we will still, for like 2 months, we may get tomatoes for between 30 to 40, 45,000 per basket.
Yes, all right. I think it's a good place to leave it. Thank you so much, African Farmer Mogaji, CEO, Farm Credit Nigeria Limited. Well, thank you for coming on Business Breakfast.
Thank you for having me.